Welcome to Emerging Franchise Brands, the podcast that introduces you to the visionary founders of America's fastest growing franchise opportunities. We'll also hear from industry pros as they share what it really takes to achieve the elusive milestone of 100 plus locations. I am your host, Frank Fiume, founder of I9 Sports, and my 20-year journey from inception to acquisition has given me a unique perspective on how to succeed in franchising. Join me as we welcome today's guest. Welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. On today's show, I have the co-founder of A Place at Home, Jerod Evanich. Jerod, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Frank. Really nice to be here. Looking forward to today.
Yeah, me too. All right, Jerod. So why don't you tell us what is A Place at Home?
Yeah, you bet. You know, a Place at Home is an in-home senior care franchise that we really focus on senior-focused care. And happy to tell you all about everything there is to do with A Place at Home. But is there anywhere you specifically wanted to start?
I do. All right, you've got such a great story to tell. I know you co-founded this with a buddy, Dustin. I'd love to know, kind of leading up to this. First of all, what were you doing before you guys started this?
Yeah, great question. I actually started selling real estate. Got my broker's license out of college, started selling in '08, which if you remember, mortgage crisis, probably the worst time in history to start a real estate career. But that's what I did. I jumped in, possibly at the worst possible time. And continued to grow, though. I really cut my teeth in sales and entrepreneurship within real estate and started to grow a pretty significant business, created my own real estate team. And really my future was pointed towards, realty and potentially having my own brokerage at some point in time. So that's what I was doing before this. Now, as life so happened, there is a different story that was going to unfold. And actually, that story really does start when I was a kid. My journey started as early as I can remember. Very fortunate to have grandparents that were very involved with my life. I owe so much to them between life lessons taught, experiences they afforded me, and their overall love and mentorship. So it wasn't until, I was busy selling real estate and growing a family that I realized I started to become the grandson who couldn't just drop everything at a moment's notice and help. And it was frustrating. And I was not happy with the way that made me feel. And we have a small family unit and there just simply wasn't enough to go around. So life was getting in the way, as it does for so many people. I just started to be consumed with other things. And just so happened that around that same time, my childhood friend since fourth grade, Dustin DeStefano, he was moving back into Omaha from traveling and having a career, in Arizona and international before that. And he was moving back to Omaha to really start his family. And so one evening, actually, Dustin and I and our spouses were sitting down, sharing life experiences, having some dinner, a bottle or two of wine, and just enjoying the evening when we both realized we were having some similar issues, different circumstances, but similar issues with not having enough care, me for my grandparents and his for his great grandmother. And so after some short kind of discovery as to what is out there that could possibly help, really kind of stumbled along in-home senior care and the benefit that could be to keep people independent in their home for as long as possible. So that was really the very first kind of light bulb that came on as to saying like, wow, there's something out there that can help and that could help my family, and what a valuable and a meaningful, business that could be. So that was kind of like the very first impetus of the business. When we continued to look into senior care, we noticed, first off, amazing things that were happening, a great industry, some, in the backyard of some, really, really large, some of the largest home care franchises in the United States are headquartered right here in Omaha. So there was quite a presence. So we didn't have to look too long, in our discovery process to see the things that were happening right. And the things that we more so focused on is how many things we thought we could do better. We really wanted to bring professionalism into the in-home care industry. There was just so many times when people were going without care. We were calling for care and not receiving services. And, all the way down to the in-home evaluation done on a scrap piece of paper with someone in flip-flops and shorts. I mean, it was, you name it, it was just kind of a string of things. And we said, if this is what's being offered, we can do it better. So it was pretty quickly from that point to we said, you know what, we need to create something we'd be happy to share with our family, with our community, and something, we could stamp our name on, a solution that
Sure.
we'd be proud of. And there you have it. We kind of set our focuses on creating an in-home senior care company. So from real estate broker to CNA, right? That's kind of how I started cutting my teeth in the in-home care world, because the
Right.
closest at that point I'd ever been to healthcare was marrying a nurse, right? So very different healthcare experience there. But, side note, Dustin and I did get our CNAs, rolled up our sleeves, and really wanted to
Oh,
learn
nice.
what our employees would be doing and the kind of care that
Wow.
our families and our clients would be receiving.
That's cool. Jerod, so you guys started the company, founded in 2012, I recall, if my notes are right.
Yeah, you got it right. Yep, we founded the business in 2012.
Right. So first of all, who came up with the name? How'd you guys decide on it? I always love how people come up with the names of their companies and the origin backstory.
So the naming convention was not a small conversation or decision to make, and it was one we brought in our families to help. So everybody was getting to throw names into the hat. Very quickly, though, through our kind of industry analysis and really just doing our research, we realized that many of our referral sources, they handed out names, a list of different preferred providers. And guess what? Those lists were alphabetical.
Aha.
There was still, on print piece of paper for the most part, and handed off to the clients or the client family member saying, hey, this is who you should talk to. Well, guess what? We knew right away we wanted to be at the top of the list, right? It's hard enough to get
Brilliant.
on that list, let alone not to be one of the first couple phone calls that are made.
Mm-hmm.
And so we knew we wanted to start with the letter A.
Brilliant.
And so from that point on, it was a matter of finding what made the most sense, what was in line with our goals, which is to keep independence in the home. I mean, ultimately, between the home and being a place, and it just kind of came together. It was actually Dustin's aunt-in-law, I guess, if that would be the correct title. He was like, "Well, what about a place at home?" We were like, "Place at home? That's amazing! I love it. Like, let's roll with it." And so that was kind of the origin of a place at home.
Okay, very cool. Well, you guys have had tremendous success, and we're going to get to the whole franchising side of things. But I love when entrepreneurs share their story because we all know entrepreneurship is not easy. And would you be willing to share maybe early on when you guys were starting out, what was maybe a challenge you faced in the early days and how you overcame it?
So from I'll even rewind briefly back to 2012 when we were starting a senior care company, when they being people who we were talking to about starting the industry, even potential investors in the community we were going to, saying, hey, first off, you guys are men in a predominantly female industry. You're
Hmm.
young at the time. I think we were 26, 27 years old when we started to investigate senior care in a predominantly old industry, and we didn't have any healthcare knowledge. So those were like huge kind of in your face items. It was like, wow, out of all the research and all the, projections and performas and SWOT analysis, everything we've been doing, and like we didn't know that ourselves until it was kind of hit us in the face. And so that was really the first thing we had to overcome
Hmm.
is those nuances, right? We continued, when people said no, we strove forward. Knew we wanted a model that was different, that was focused on a solution and comprehensive for the client. And when we started getting Best of Omaha year after year in a market with some of the largest competitors again in the world, we knew we were doing something right. So we wanted a franchise. Then came the next hurdle, right? We need to fund the franchise. Well, we tried and we asked a lot of people. And again, you guys are young. What do you know about franchising? Why don't you go start a franchise and then learn it and then go start your own, be a
Gosh.
franchisee for a while, wait out in the water. And so we had a lot of people again saying no. But
Hmm.
we drove past that and we started to launch. And we did bring on some small equity partners and family and friends and took on a loan ourselves to be able to launch. But that was just some of the hurdles that it took just to get to the point of saying, okay, now we're going to franchise and open our doors and experience what the world of franchising has to offer.
Right.
So, once we started franchising, our initial goals, I mean, we were selling 10 to 12 locations a year. By our fifth year, we were at 50 plus locations.
Wow.
I mean, it was on this amazing growth trajectory to where we were going to be competing with some of, the bigger name brands in a very short amount of time because of our differentiators. But it wasn't that easy. There's a lot of competition out there. And our niche, kind of our senior focused care approach, is very specific to in-home care and people in the industry where you're using lingo where it's like, oh, I get it. And you have to go through and explain all the reasons why you're different. And you get done and they're like, so, so tell me again, why are you different? I was like, all right, hold on. So we gotta kind of reframe this. We gotta bring the lingo down to a point where people can understand what makes this different, and more, kind of relate to them and their situations. But yeah, early days of franchising, it literally was Dustin and me smiling, dialing, 10 plus hours a day on the phone through thousands of paid lead generators, going into expos where we really had no reason to be in because we didn't know what in the world we were doing at that time, with thousands of people coming by, kind of adult trick-or-treating and taking all of our swag we had just spent so much money on. Like, hey, hold on, we're on a budget here. What's happening? That's my pin. Stop it.
True.
Those kind of things.
True.
But yeah, so we had some hurdles, there
We
to
all do.
begin, but for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, we all do. Jared, was there a pivotal moment for you and Dustin when you guys knew you were onto something big? Like when did you have this aha moment? Like we've got real potential here.
Yeah, most certainly. There's been a few moments. When we knew we wanted a franchise is when we were competing with people that had been in our market for 20 plus years ahead of us and receiving that best of Omaha, as I had mentioned, years on end. We're like, wow, our name is right there in the headlines with the best of the best. And we were able to do it in just a few years. When we really notice this, it's our senior focused care approach of saying like, hey, we are doing it differently and we are able to gain that kind of traction quickly in a market. Like it's time to spread that
Yeah.
to the US and to so many more communities where people can take advantage of that senior focused care approach. It still hasn't even quite hit me yet with our current growth, but internally and something personally that really hit me, that made me know I was doing something right and that our company was really helping people, was when I had a chance to go back and talk to, I'd received my EMBA from University of Nebraska at Omaha. And I went back and talked to a cohort a few years later, and presented, to them. And after I was done, somebody came up to me who I did not know and thanked me. They said, I need to thank you. Yeah, without you, I wouldn't be here today. And I'm okay. Yeah, tell me more. I said, well,
Mm,
a place at home has been taking care of my mom for the last year and a half. And without their support, I wouldn't have been able to go and get my education and try to achieve the goals that I once had because I've been the
wow.
primary caregiver for so long. So without a place at home, I wouldn't be here. And at this time, we had already started franchising. I did not at that time get to know every single client and their family like I once did. But it most certainly was an eye-opening experience and something that drove us to say, yep, we're doing the right thing.
That's a pivotal moment for sure when you have that experience with the client and realizing what good you're doing for people. This is not just a great business opportunity, but you're making a difference in people's lives, not just the person who's being taken care of, but the people who are around them, like this person. That's phenomenal. You're in a very crowded space, let's face it, right? There's a lot of competition, and you mentioned being unique and being different. Maybe you could share with me and share with the audience a little bit. What do you think has stood out that has really made you guys different in such a crowded field?
Most certainly. So we call it our senior focused care approach. So it's a comprehensive senior care model. It tries to encompass the entire aging journey in home care. All right.
Mhm.
We're not doing everything for everybody. We're not going outside of our wheelhouse or our core competencies within our foundation of in-home care. We're just utilizing the people and the resources and the referral community that we grow in different ways to add value to our clients and to add value to our franchisees through multiple revenue streams. So, as I mentioned, built on a foundation of in-home care. And within in-home care, we have a lot of specialty programs of things that make that service stand alone, amongst the best of the best of what you can receive in the home. But outside of that, we provide care coordination. So this is outside care, really outside of the home, extending to providers and really just coordinating to make sure that the client has a smooth transition through their aging process. Dr. A and hospitalist C and the geriatrician all are on the same page. And after a hospitalization, we have the right medical records and the right treatment of care going forward and the right follow-up. We're just connecting all the dots as a
Okay.
liaison, as a coordinator, right? So that's our care coordinate service line. Third, we have what we call senior living alternatives. So if home is no longer an option, if somebody cannot stay at home, usually physically, financially, or mentally, someone could be driven into more of a community style living. We provide them with those alternatives, right? And that is known as placement services within the industry, but it's essentially, it's like a real estate agent for our clients to help them find the best next living option. And then we do receive a referral fee from those communities when they move in. And then lastly, we also provide staffing solutions, primarily to other senior facilities, independent, assisted living, long-term care communities, your kind of quote unquote nursing homes, doctor's offices, home health, you name it. Anybody that has CNAs, home health aides, companions, we help to staff their needs. And so it's a comprehensive approach, as I mentioned, for the seniors. And this is where it gets to be one level bit more kind of in the weeds, but so important is that we have that many more resources in the community. So when we go out to our referral sources, we have a different pitch. We're able to help someone like an assisted living keep people in their homes through in-home care and care coordination, their home being that apartment within that assisted living. We're able to help the community that we're approaching for those referrals by filling their beds through our senior living alternatives program, right, which increases their occupancy. And lastly, if that same community is having problems staffing, we can help fill in our great trained qualified staff to go in and be as if they are one of the employees of that assisted living. So when we go into these referral communities, which our industry is very much referral based, we have a different message, we have a different approach, and we can help them as much as they can help us.
Sweet. That's awesome, Jerod. Okay, let's talk franchising and get into this franchise story. First off, what made you guys even decide to franchise?
Boy, I've got all sorts of stories for you, but I'll try to make this as short as possible. When I got my undergrad in business administration, real estate, and entrepreneurship, they shone a very negative light on franchising. The university, the professors, they say, hey, you know what? You're going to lose control. You're going to lose consistency. You may have rogue franchisees. You're going to get lower margin, right? Like stay independent. Grow yourself, maximize your margins, have the control you need. That was a message I came into my entrepreneurial life with, right? And so I was a little standoffish, franchising. I don't know. And it seems like a lot of the other big players are doing it. So they must have something going right for them. But also, I'm kind of a trailblazer. I don't necessarily want to follow the route of others. I want to kind of blaze my own
Sure.
trail to some degree. So I'm willing to kind of
Right.
push the boundaries and the norms and try to look at other approaches to doing it. My business partner, he very much franchising. Absolutely. Let's move forward. Wanted a franchise. And so we had kind of this push and pull between what is the right method of growth. And I'm glad we did because it drove us to get our ducks in a row, right? To make sure we had everything we needed to be successful to scale and to grow into franchising. But at the very end of the day, the thing that finally was a tipping point of to moving into franchising versus independent, we wanted people with stake in the game. Right? We wanted kind of
That's
the mayor of
huge.
their community, someone who has an impact or wants to make an impact in their local areas that are willing to be kind of the face and the billboard of the brand. And lastly, but most importantly, right, do what it takes to care for their clients and their caregivers. And at the end of the day, we really found that people with ownership are those who are going to go that extra mile. And so that's what
Yeah.
pushed us into franchising.
Yeah. The professors didn't mention that part.
Oh, no.
The power of the state, people having a stake in the business and your ability to scale. And quite honestly, your franchisees that you're going to bring on board are probably going to be a whole lot more qualified and just be overall have a better skill set than the employees you could have afforded, when you're starting
Certainly.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a lot of it, we don't figure that out until we start franchising, that typically happens. Jerod, so how many franchises do you guys have now? Franchise locations throughout the US?
So right now we have 46 open locations with an additional 6 that are launching.
And how many states are you guys in now?
Right now we are in 20 states.
What's the most exciting part for you guys of being this, being an emerging franchisor? I mean, you guys are, what you've got in the 40s now. So you got out of the, it's tough. The first dozen, it's tough to get through, but you've done that. You've done that with flying colors now. So what's exciting right now for you guys as an emerging franchisor?
What's exciting is just the power that we're seeing in our brand, really being able to have people recognize us, even in markets that we're not there yet. We are actively receiving inquiries about franchising in different locations. Our number one sales tool is our website, and organically finding people who are wanting to build a franchise in senior care that are reaching out to us directly. That was not the case 2 years ago. That wasn't anywhere near the case, when we were launching, and we were doing everything but like opening a phone book and calling every name in there to try to get a franchise, or at least people interested. So that is, the power with the brand. Most certainly is exciting, but also just the growth potential that we have. Our franchise owners are amazing. We do a really good job on the development side of vetting and bringing in really qualified people. It is special to be a part of this brand, and we have gates up and not everybody gets in. So those who we do have, their culture and the community that they are bringing and growing with us is fantastic, along with the support system. And so if anything, I mean, we've created something much bigger than us, and it's continuing to grow. And, with our franchise owners and just their collaboration, and, it's something, again, just something bigger than us that's grown. I'd say that's been kind of one of the most fun things and the exciting things to be a part of.
Sure. Jerod, one of the most common questions I get from emerging founders that are just starting out in franchising, it's where am I going to find my first franchisee or first, half dozen? Where did you guys find your first dozen franchise owners?
Yeah, great question. So as I mentioned, it was tougher than we thought. We did a lot of smiling and dialing, but eventually we finally got our first one, right? Our first one came a little under a year into when we started offering or having an executed franchise agreement and an FDD. And it was tough. We had joined the IFA prior to, we had a solid franchise agreement and FDD. We started joining broker groups as well to be able to kind of expand the name. And we just started buying leads and doing whatever we could to bring people in. And so had I gone back and done anything different, I would have invested a lot more money into the website and bringing that in as more of a powerhouse up front.
Okay.
To have that for years into the future. But, given what we did, it was tough to get that first one. Once we got the first one, it started snowballing a little bit. By 2018, we launched our first 3 locations. And then over the next 2 years, we launched another dozen. And so the first one was tough, but it's like, okay, now we got it. Now we can actually start implementing in all these trainings and the support and the launch process and all these things we've finally been working on. We get to do it, right? And so now we also have somebody to validate and tell everybody else what it was like to work with us.
Absolutely.
And so that was a big turning point.
Yeah. So were the source of your first franchisees from the broker groups or from the website or from the trade show that you did? Where did you find them?
The very first franchisee was introduced to us through, it was, Franchise Gator, I believe, was our
so one of the web portals.
Was a web portal. Yeah.
Okay.
We were part of multiple portals. I think our first 3 territories that we sold were from portals. And then we started getting in a trickle of consultant, broker leads. And, it was really hard with brokers when you didn't have one.
Of course.
Once you had a little bit more validation, they were a little more willing to kind of jump on board. And so after, I'd say, the first 3, we've had pretty much up until this last year or so, pretty much a 50-50 split on broker franchisees, referred franchisees, and like everything else.
It's organic. Okay.
Yeah.
But Jerod, what type of person do you think it takes to thrive in your system? Have you noticed any common threads among your most successful franchisees?
Yes. So number one, most certainly will be that they align with our values, right? We are compassionate, accountable, respectful, and ethical. They have to have a passion for this business and a reason as to why they're doing this business. And we can pull that why out of them, and we know they're in it for the right reason. They've been personally touched in one way or another from circumstances, whether positively or negatively, surrounding senior care and that kind of end-of-life experience. It's like those are hitting, big, lights are going off saying, hey, okay, here we go. This person really does. They want to start a business, but they want to start a business with a purpose. And
Right.
so being aligned with our values, having that why, those are the things that when the times get tough, as it does in any business, we go
Hmm.
back to with coaching and say, hey, you remember why you're here? Remember the experiences that you had, and you wanted to ensure that people going forward wouldn't have those kind of experiences. Well, you're the one who's making that difference. So, stand up, shake it off, and let's go.
Right. Yeah, entrepreneurship is not easy, but if they have your support and help motivate you and remembering their why, there's nobody else to do that for them. That's the beauty of a franchise system, right? Is that you guys get an opportunity to coach them when we know entrepreneurship is lonely. It's a lonely business.
Yeah. Which brings me on to my next characteristic is being coachable.
Mm,
We have turned down people in the past who came to us saying, "This is how I'm going to change your system. These are the things I'm going to
oh gosh.
implement. This is and it's like, hey, that's great. Please,
Hmm.
please feel free to do all those things, just not with us.
Right,
You know,
right.
you're here to gain the value of everything we've learned. To not make the mistakes we have, to have support in so many different ways by your side,
Hmm.
but we're not reinventing the wheel, right, with you. So most certainly being coachable, making sure that we're bringing someone in who's willing to learn for sure.
That's smart.
Leveraging the network, being a part of what's bigger than all of us right now, which really is our network and our franchisees, be willing to help them as well as take feedback from them. We literally have an open source where questions are being asked and answered like 24 hours a day. And that's from our franchisees just wanting to help others and make sure that they can kind of pay it forward. Our veterans are on there just as much as our newbies, putting in information and helping each other out. But lastly, I would say kind of the key characteristics. We do that Zoracle profiling and whatnot, but we very much are societal and achievers. So it's like we want to help people, but we want to like do it better than anyone else.
Right,
That's
right.
that's what we're looking for.
Fantastic. What's the investment range of the franchise opportunity?
Currently, we're between about 90 and 165,000 is the initial investment range.
Hmm. And how does that range because of the size of the territory or where it is? How does that work?
The primary difference in that range is going to be your own operational structure. If you're coming in like a husband and a wife partnership, that's one less employee that you are going to be
Okay.
hiring. The other big swing on that initial investment range is covering labor. So labor is a great initial investment and it's a great initial expense because that means you're also billing, right?
Hmm.
But labor is the number one initial expense in franchise fee as well. But outside of franchise fee, when you're launching, if you launch and you're getting clients hand over fist, before the clients pay, you're paying the caregivers. So you need to have a decent reservoir of cash reserves to be able to pay the caregivers as you're collecting from your clients, especially when you're brand new and you're just kind of learning your collections process. It's like, we may have taught you, we may have worked with you on it, but now it's real time. It's like, oh gosh, I actually have to actually deliver the bill and I have to make sure I get paid. And what about
Sure.
the payroll and all these things and making sure they get it all right. So that's kind of one of the larger parts of that initial investment.
And Jerod, if I'm a franchisee, obviously this all comes down to me getting caregivers, right? I mean, they're the front line. And tell me about how I go about doing that and how difficult that is and how many caregivers do I generally need when I'm opening up a franchise initially?
Yeah. Oh, great. Great questions. So throughout from the time we opened, the industry number one, being a part of Home Care Association of America and looking at all the industry trends and a lot of the data and reports that are coming from there and other sources, labor's always been the number one concern
Hmm.
and really remains the number one concern on any service business. Um, Really any business that involves people, it continues to be one of the biggest concerns, right? But of course, our business, the backbone is the people. We don't have a business if it's not for caregivers. And
Right.
so it's a focus number one of finding the right people. And then of course, number two is being able to retain them. So and that's kind of the tricky part. You can find people. Not always as easy to find the good ones, but retaining
Hmm.
them is kind of where the magic happens. So throughout the years, our training processes and our employee our hiring processes have changed significantly. We've been able to implement in technology to help us on the front end with ATS, applicant tracking software, to where it's very mobile friendly. It's eliminating barriers that normally may disqualify somebody before they even come into your front door.
Hmm.
Our hiring process used to take about 2.5, almost 3 weeks to be able to complete. That was through multiple interviews, face-to-face interviews and orientations and getting all the paperwork done. We can do it in like a day now and still have great people, so long as they use the technology, they complete the forms that they need to come in, of course, for that final orientation. We've been able to really greatly reduce the barriers up front. So that's bringing on the good ones. Now, we do something a little differently. We actually include orientation into a part of our hiring process. And although they may be hired, if they're not showing up on time, involved in orientation, not on their phone, respectful. But that's kind of like our final test to see if they can make it through into the system. If they can't, here's your paycheck. It's your first and final. Thank you so much. If they can, fantastic. You've made it through our final process, and let's move forward into care, caring for seniors. And so that's one item, right? The best offense is a good defense. So making sure we're bringing in the right people. To continue to train and develop them, that's the next trick, right? We need to show people coming into us who are caregivers, CNAs, CMAs, that we're not just a job. We're not just another, stepping point in their career or just another care agency. And we show them that there's a way to be able to develop their skill sets into potentially administrative roles, into potentially referral-based roles, or marketing roles, as well as office management roles. So we have like a career path to show a caregiver, you may start here, but here are all the different ways you can grow with us, all the way up into, someday you may be even a franchise owner, right? And so it really shows them their path and what it could be with a place at home. Now, we've also invested in multiple LMS systems, so learning management software, to make sure we're continuing to develop them, train them, make sure that their skills are the best that they could possibly be. And all of those will help for retention. The culture that our franchisees build with their care staff and with their administrative staff is going to flow right down to the caregivers and right into the experience that the clients receive. So it has to be something that they want to be a part of, that they believe in, and that they see their role as a part of the bigger picture of the companies. Owners who can really embody that and really push that down all the way to it being seen through the senior's eyes and the care that they receive, those are the ones that have the best retention rates, right? They're getting awarded in industry as best of home care providers and best home care employers. Now, the size of a location, that is really going to be dependent. You're only as big as however many caregivers you have to be able to deploy. The growth trajectory is different depending on a lot of different circumstances, especially the one in the driver's seat, the franchisee. How much foot they have on the gas pedal is going to be a big determinant on their speed of growth. But we're looking right out of the gate. They're going to be needing to hire about 3 to 5 caregivers when they start. That'll get them up to roughly almost about 100 hours a week, and to the point to where now they always need to be really that 3 to 5 caregivers ahead of their growth. Why is that? Well, at any given time, we can have kind of that holy grail mecca, that 24/7 client who comes in. Usually it's a Friday at like 4 o'clock and everybody's checking out. And it's like, oh, wait, you want to start when? Tonight? Okay. And I'm looking at my caregiver base and it's like, oh gosh, well, this is really tight. Well, we need the ability to be able to plug in some caregivers at any given time, so we're not turning down business. So it's a push and a pull. But I would say by the time you're doing about 500,000 so in revenue, you're going to have about 20 to 25 caregivers. And then by the time you're hitting roughly $1 million, depending on the area will be very dependent on number of hours per client. In higher, more average areas, we're looking at, a caregiver base of about 40 to 55 or so for that $1 million business. And then kind of moving on to that $2 million business is going to be closer to that 100 mark or so in number of employees.
How big of an area does my franchise cover if I was a franchise owner?
We go on senior population. 40,000 senior population is what we look for. We use mapping software and build an awkwardly shaped zip code specific territory that's going to get about as close to that 40,000 mark as possible. Okay. We do offer multiple, territory expansion, and depending on the geography, potentially through one kind of HQ or one operations center. So geography wise, it really just depends on how dense and where you are, geographically and metropolitan or more rural. But 40,000 seniors usually equals between about 300 to 500,000 total population.
Jerod, let's talk about vision for the future. This is one of my favorite sections to talk about with founders. Where do you see this company going next 5 to 10 years?
We're going to continue to invest in our people, number one, bringing on talented individuals to help us continue to grow and give the best possible support to our franchisees. Anytime we can invest in something that is going to make our franchisees' life easier and more profitable, that's where we're looking. Technology most certainly can help us get there in a lot of different ways. So we have our finger on the pulse in a lot of different tech areas, whether it be caregiver specific, client specific, care specific, or even potential other service lines or additions we could have through sensors, predictive analysis, and trying to get our foot in the door to help seniors who just aren't ready yet for a caregiver. So a lot of those things most certainly not only are we looking at, but the industry as a whole. So those most certainly we're staying in front of, staying on top of, and getting to continue to give kind of that best support and tech for our franchisees. But in order to hit kind of our goals of where we want to be by 2030, we want to have 250 locations, right? And so as I mentioned before, at 48, launching another 6 right now. We're going to be surpassing that 50 mark. We've got about another 8 franchise agreements that are out for signature territories right now. And our goal by the end of the year is to have another about 17 on top of those 8. So going into next year, 2026, we should have upwards of about 70 or so locations that are open with another half a dozen that are in that launch mode. So that being said, we're a little ways off from that 250 mark. So we have our eyes set on a few different things. One of them, as I mentioned, technology continuing to be, more marketable and kind of more sexy in the senior care field with all the tech that's flashy and that people want. Of course, that's kind of a given. But we're looking at international expansion, starting with Canada and potentially growing there with some powerhouses and franchising that we are pretty excited about. We think that will give us a much larger pool, help us to be able to kind of grow our development efforts into another playground for potential locations. And then we have some other kind of things up our sleeve where we hope that we can infuse to kind of get to that mark.
Sweet. All right. Well, I don't want you to give away any secrets, and maybe you haven't thought about this yet, but I'm curious to know have you thought about like what kind of legacy you want to leave with your brand someday? And who knows, it might be way out far in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Dustin and I, our goal is to create an organization we'd be proud to pass down to our family and generations to come. That has really been the goal from the beginning. We created it to help our family. We want it to remain, as such. So that's the primary focus. Time, of course, will tell. And most certainly, I know many of founders throughout history who have said the very thing, but didn't end up going that way. So that's our goal. But at the same time, we know that Dustin has 3 kids. I have 2 kids. They have minds of their own. And, senior care franchise may not be, exactly what they want to do. So want to be realistic about that as well.
Cool. Well, it sounds like now is a great time to be part of your franchise system. If someone was interested in learning more about the franchise opportunity, where would they go?
So they'd go to aplaceathome.com/franchise, aplaceathome.com/franchise. Even if you make it to aplaceathome.com, just click on, the inquiry tab for franchising. It's going to give you all the information that you need, as well as links to be able to connect with us and start our discovery process.
Sweet. All right, I got one last question for you. I always end every episode with the franchise tip jar because the franchise community is so generous with sharing information and helping one another. So my question for you is, if you had a friend come to you and they were interested in opening a franchise, any brand, what would be a piece of advice you'd give them before they do anything to make sure they're making the right decision?
Yeah, great question. Number one, and I've had many friends actually approach me for things like this. But number one, start with doing what you love, right? Find what you love and the business will follow. And when you're doing it, it no longer really becomes work. And then, that's an age-old saying, of course. But most certainly, first off, start with something you enjoy. Jump into an industry that you know nothing about or could care less about just because you see dollar signs. From there, align with the values, look for strong support, strong validators, and strong financials, and you can't go wrong.
Jerod, that is so well said. Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on the show, and I wish you guys all the best and continued success.
Yeah, Frank, thank you so much. It was a lot of fun today. Appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fumey, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.